All right, everybody. Sorry I'm a little later in getting this up, but I've been sick most of the week, so I'm going to try to get through this while keeping my lungs on the inside today. So it's been really encouraging over the last couple of weeks to see some different interactions with people as we continue to plow through toward the end of Matthew. We're getting close, but as we do that, that does pose a difficulty for us because we're reading it over such a long period of time. Sometimes it's hard to make those big connections when there's such a long time. So we're trying to do that as we read it over this time. So this week we're at Matthew 23 to 26. Now it starts, Matthew 23, with Jesus just taking aim at the religious leaders. And this is, remember, it's coming off of Jesus just having those confrontations, those questions asked by the religious leaders. And so now in chapters 23 through 26, it's really going to get heated a little bit here. And you sort of see this, Jesus is really taking them to task because these are the very people who should recognize who he is. They are the religious authorities. They're the experts on Scripture. And all of a sudden, when Scripture is being fulfilled in their midst, they miss it. And so that's the thing. And so it ends with this lament over Jerusalem. The people who should recognize don't, and this desire for God to call these people there. So that's kind of how chapter 23, but in chapters 24 and 25, we get what is the fifth discourse, popularly known as the Olivet Discourse, because Jesus goes up onto the Mount of Olives to deliver it. And now there are a couple of themes that come in through these two chapters in 24 and 25. The first is that Jesus is coming back in glory and in power. Now, we don't have time to really unpack every single detail, and believe me, you can't just unpack this text without unpacking a bunch of others when you want to talk about end time. So if you want to have that discussion, great. But the big themes that we're seeing is I'm coming back in glory and in power. I'm going to come back in judgment there. That's coming there. And you're sort of seeing all these things to do, but you also see that the world itself, even after he's telling them all these things, he said, just as in the days of Noah, people are just ignoring everything that's going. Signs of the ends of time. Everything's happening, and there are going to be people who are just completely oblivious. They were oblivious until the days of Noah, and so that's what it's going to be like here. But and here's where we want to really focus. We want to focus on what is Jesus calling us to. Because he's going to get two themes here. The first is be ready. You get the parable of the 10 virgins there. There were 5 who were prepared, 5 were not. That's a problem there. Then you also get these calls to be faithful. You get the parable of the talents, and what he's saying is, look, and also the parable of stewards. He's telling us, look, those who know that Jesus Christ is coming back ought to be living our lives today knowing that that's going to happen. Right? That's what Jesus is pushing at over these parables. Be ready, but also not just be ready like, oh, it's going to happen, but be ready and faithful doing what he's called you to do in those times. And then in verses 31 through 46 of chapter 25, we're going to read that Christ will judge. He will separate them, the sheep from the goats. And all this ends in chapter 26, verse 5, or the 1 through 5 there. It's coming to a head. We see that now, all of a sudden, it's all coming to the crucifixion. That's where this is all heading there. So as you're sort of reading this section, just kind of keep those themes in mind as you're going through there. Now we turn over to Psalms, and I love these few Psalms here in a row. You get Psalm 25, it's a prayer for deliverance and for mercy. Psalm 26 is a prayer, prayer for vindication. And then there's also this idea that he loves to be in God's presence, in God's dwelling place. That's a beautiful image there. He knows this is where his soul belongs there. He desires that. And then 27 and 28, 2 great Psalms, but you see in those, we see that God is light, God is strength in the midst of trouble. So these Psalms, as you sort of look through those Psalms, look for the interaction. God, this is so hard. This is not working out well. You see the plea there, but then you turn and you get this this look. Sometimes it's like us, right? We're heads down, everything just going against us, and then we look up and say, okay, God's got this. And that's kind of what we're seeing there in these couple of Psalms, and just see how the psalmist will go and say, but God is my rock, or God is my light, and just this confidence that no matter what else happens, he's got God, and God's got him. So that's where we're kind of going at. That's what's sort of going on in those. I pray this is helpful. And I pray that as you go through, just keep those things in the back of your mind as you mull them over. All right. Well, excuse me. Happy reading, and we will see you back here next week.